So creating a consumer right now, after creating the producer, is almost nothing. Let me just quit this producer running here, and now I'm going to turn my attention towards this one. So I've already created my package structure with messaging in here and then a Q consumer. So I'm actually not going to write any code here just yet. I'm going to copy everything from the producer class that I just made all the way till implements. So I'm going to take that. There's this curly bracket. Just keep it in mind. I'm going to select the curly bracket and then paste all of this stuff. So Q consumer, producer becomes consumer in that case. Also in this case here, Q consumer, message consumer. I just want to rename this one as well so I can see where it breaks. See here, this one. Consumer in this case becomes a create consumer, and the destination code remains the same, and all of this remains the same. We don't have a send method anymore because the consumer is not going to send anything. We can change this one as well to consumer. And then the only thing I need to change is like a receive method. So let me see here. I'll make this thing return a Boolean as well, and I'll receive something. So the same deal. If I'm already having some error, then just return false. Otherwise, we can try to say var message equals consumer.receive. And we see here this thing returns a message type object if it worked, but it can also throw one of these JMS exceptions. So let's see here. I'll take this suggestion, but get rid of that one. If the message is not equals null, I want to do something with it. And then finally, I'll return true because I've successfully received the message and dealt with it. Now, I don't want to put any application-specific logic into this Q consumer. That's not the point. I want to give it some piece of functionality that I tell it, hey, listen, whenever there's a message coming in here, call this code. It'll take care of everything. So the way we can do that is to implement some functional programming in this class. I want to come up here and have a private final consumer. Now, don't get confused with this consumer and maybe some message consumer. This thing is coming from this java.util.function package. So I'll select that one. This generic argument that we pass in here, that's the type of the argument that will be passed into the method. So if we take a look at this method, for instance, QProducer, send takes in a string argument. Now, to represent this as a functional programming construct, we can have something like this. So it's something that takes in a string and it returns a Boolean result. That's going to be a function. Function, because this one takes in the type. So it's going to be string, that's the argument type, and then Boolean is the return value from this function. See here, and then it's already suggesting that I can initialize this to this send method. But in my case, I don't have a return type for what I want. All I want is a method that takes in a string and returns void. So that's why I can use this consumer here. I'll call this my message handler. And then because it's final, I need to pass it in with the constructor. So I'll pass it in as the final argument and then say this dot message handler becomes the message handler. And we'll see how we can deal with this consumer thing. Next, if I receive a message, I want to extract that body, like the content of it. And the message has this method on there called getBody, and then I pass in the type that body is. So in my case, it's going to be a string. And then I can tell my message handler consumer to accept this string as an argument and then call whatever code sits behind it. So we can also implement this in with some tests. Test here, public void test receive. So I'm going to try with resources. So I'll have a system under test. It's going to be a new AMQ consumer. The broker URL AMQP localhost 5672. That's the Artemis installation running here. I'm going to consume from this messages in queue. And then finally, I need to give it this consumer function. Let's implement that as a method. So handle message. We specified our consumer to take in a string argument. So I'll pass in. So I'll give it a string argument, and then I'll simply say, I print this thing to the standard output. And then we can do Q consumer test colon handle message. Well, it wants to be static, so we can use this keyword in this case. Let me just clean up this formatting here a bit. The other way we could have specified this thing is with a lambda expression. So it takes in a string, which is going to be my message. Then I just want to system.out that message. But you'll notice that this thing is going to give me some, how do you say, like improvements. So replace lambda with method reference. That's going to be just like that. This system.out is an object. It's a stream. And on there is a method called printLine. So this is the object resolution operator, or at least that's how I know it. And I'm telling it, take this printLine and use that as the consumer. Because this thing takes in a string as an argument and returns void. But I think what I'll do is, just to keep things simple, I'll do it like that. So this, which is the current test object instance, has this method on there, which takes in a string and returns void. And that's what we need in our consumer. So let's receive some messages. I'm going to assert that this happened, assert true. In the case that it didn't happen, I have that get error method. I just do that. Now I expect to see something like hello world or whatever being printed here. And there we go. Hello world is being printed. But the most important thing is that the test succeeded. Now, this one, in addition to having a broker running somewhere, it also needs some messages to be in queued there. So this makes this unit test even more complicated to deal with. I just like to keep these unit tests here, or this. It's not really a unit test. Then in that case, it's more like a test-driven development kind of tool that I'm using. And then I'll just disable this test when I push my code. So if I want to make sure that stuff is working, I can just come here and disable the disabled annotation, run the test, and then make sure to re-enable the disabled annotation. But there we go. The consumer is also working. Let's see if it does the same with the active AMQ installation. So I don't know if I have messages left to consume there. I'll run this, and then we'll see if there are any messages on here. So see here, it's kind of stuck, right? Which is horrible in the case of a unit test. You don't want this thing to be stuck, but it's an easy problem to fix. If we go to the unit test for the producer, I'm actually going to rename this to test send. I can now run this. If this succeeds, we'll also see that this one should have succeeded as well. Let me just try this again. Test queue. That's a problem. Let's see here. I'll take this again here for the active AMQ test. And there we go. The active AMQ one also worked. Hello, active AMQ. I don't know where the other ones went then. But now we have a unit test to test both of them. I mean, you won't really be running both brokers in the same environment. But this is just nice to see that they're both working with the same code.